The Pirate Ship of Cultural Media by Christopher Castellanos. Full sail ahead. This short presentation is a look at a specific innovation that has changed not only how we receive and share and enjoy media, but also how a specific innovation could help redefine an entire global culture. Admittedly, there's a lot of incredible inventions within the last 27 years that have helped shape and mold our society and media culture as we know it. But when I say 27 years, what innovation am I speaking of? What is the cornerstone of all these innovations that have taken place and according to Professor Lawrence Krauss will continue to shape what we do for the next 20 centuries? The flagship that started it all. It is none other than the invention of the personal household computer, or PC as we used to call it. A storm is brewing. Before computers, most people would watch television and listen to radio, go out and buy magazines and books to get their media fill. I myself remember digging through huge racks of cassette tapes, searching for my favorite groups and artists. Then it was off to the Blockbuster Video to rent a couple VHS cassette tapes on the way home. I read my comic book that had the occasional ad every 3 or 4 pages or so. It was a different world in the sense that we really had to go out and try to take ownership of our media. Ownership as in buying our music, movies, or whatever sort of entertainment we were after. This was a golden age for the media as sales for products were really the only way for the general population to have ownership over it. But as the computer became more accessible to the household, the quicker the demand was to share information without the usual radio, television, or letter in the mail. Little did anyone know how these two worlds, media and electronic information, would impact and change not only the culture of a society as a whole, but also the way in which we live, learn, and interact with one another, and how we receive the media of our modern time. The Pirates at Bay. When was the first computer invented? Well, that is a tricky question. The answer varies so much due to the fact that so many individuals from different time spans contributed to what would one day be the complete entirety of the computer as you are probably experiencing it right now. Its origins go back as far as 1946 when a computer system took up an entire room, but the cultural media purposes but for cultural media purposes, let's shoot forward to the 1990s when the computer really flourished and became the sharing and receiving machine we know and love today. Computers were originally meant to share privately military information from one side of the globe to the other. And eventually we conquered this feat, and as time moved on, more and more computers were added to this network that erupted into what is now the World Wide Web. Something to consider that perhaps we did not before is just how powerful these computers would become and what type of information would we eventually be sharing with one another. As technology progresses, our computers were able to send and receive bigger bits of information, so much so that it became possible to upload and share media such as pictures, videos, and music. This was a great time for the consumer, no doubt. But as free media ran rampant in the depths of the internet, industries began to lose millions of dollars. Actors, producers, everyone involved in the creation of a media took a huge hit in revenue. The seas of change. Now, although computers in collaboration with the internet literally threaten to destroy the media of yesterday, it also sets a new course in our culture and the way we view our current popular media. For instance, in the past, it was a combination of either word of mouth, television, or radio that kept us connected and in the know on culture events and trends. Current event and trends. Now we can literally sit in our homes and sail the entire globe and beyond. Media is at our fingertips, and if we desire a song or a movie, we can have it just as fast as our minds can think of it. Our hands can type it, or Siri listens and searches for it. We have went from a culture that possesses ownership over media products to an age of access. Access is in being the access to media anytime we want it, while never actually owning it. However, if we wish to own it, we can do that as well. In this current age, as I write this down, media has become so accessible, it's almost not accessible at all. In other words, searching for our favorite songs has become lost in a sea of cover bands and amateur vocalists. Our movies have been held hostage for a monthly fee, and the quality of many of these videos is a pirate's life for me. As media began to run rampant, laws started coming into effect that protected products and threatened to fine and possibly even imprison individuals for sharing media over the internet for free. This was a term coined as pirating, and it is still illegal to this day. However, it has not stopped the illegal sharing of media, but over time, streaming networks have become a familiar necessity on our computers and many versions of the processing systems, such as laptops, tablets, and cell phones. Some examples of these programs or applications, or apps for short, are Netflix and Spotify. These apps are subscription-based and charge a monthly fee for their services. However, in exchange, you can view and listen to many of your favorite types of media at the push of a touch-sensitive screen. Within the span of 10 years, it almost seems as if technology went from trying to save as many songs and videos on the largest memory card you could afford to not really having any music or videos on our computers at all, due to the fact that they are always there whenever we desire them. So what's the point of all that uploading, sharing, and downloading anymore? There really is none, unless you're very adamant about the ownership. Treasure Island. Clearly, we have seen some examples of how the household computer really put a dent in the bank accounts of those who create these medias. But we must be positive at the same time and find some ways those in the media field can still create the media we know and love and still make a living. There was a time when Broadway shows held the throne for much of our media entertainment, all the way up until the invention of the radio and television. Now, instead of doing a show a night for a decent wage, their act was recorded, and their compensation was a one-time payment for their skills, as it could now be viewed repeatedly. This looked like the end of Broadway shows, and it sort of was in a way. But out of it rose a new era and age of creating profit. I believe the story will be the same for computers and the internet. The golden age of production may be gone, but there is still so much talent out there and money to be made, just in different ways. 7 billion people waiting to grab onto new and trending media are depending on the evolution of this innovation, and it is up to us to listen to them and be creative. There have been many storms our cultural media has went through, but the waters are far from empty. Changing tide. I feel cultures before the internet already went through a sort of changing of the tide, so to speak. Well, but with the invention of the computer, the change in which our culture evolves seemed to be unfolding to us faster and faster. The reason I feel is because media and information spread just as fast as the thought that originated it. Back before the household internet accessible computer, We interacted the majority of the time face to face in the real world, and that is how we interacted. We also used the telephone and letters, but not as often. Batten down the hatches. We have two options at this point. We can either be resilient or we could be supple. Computers are now in our pockets, connected to our wrists, and driving us around town in our vehicles. Being resilient doesn't make much sense anymore if we expect to make cultural media our daily bread and butter. Being supple may sound weak at first, but in the words of Charles Darwin, it is not the strongest of species that survives, nor the most intelligent that survives. It is the one that is most adaptable to change.